This video is about European battlegrounds that became legendary. Subscribe for more. In the fall of 1944, the air was thick with anticipation as the Allies advanced through the heart of Europe. The war had raged for years, tearing apart nations and families, but it was in this critical moment that fate would weave together the lives of three men: an American soldier, a German officer, and an Israeli intelligence operative. Private Jack Thompson, a 22-year-old from Nebraska, stood on the banks of the Rhine River, observing the distant horizon where the sun dipped below the battlefield. His heart raced. The stark contrast of the lush green landscape and the war-torn remnants of what once was a thriving region struck him deeply. Jack had joined the army not out of a sense of adventure but a call to duty, spurred on by the horrific accounts of the Nazis' atrocities across Europe. Each day was a battle against both the enemy and the demons clawing at his conscience. Across the river, in the crumbling remnants of a German villa, stood Oberleutnant Klaus Richter. At 30, Klaus had already seen too much for a lifetime. Once a promising officer in the Wehrmacht, his ideals had withered beneath the weight of the FHRS orders. The realization that he was fighting for a regime that had forsaken humanity gnawed at him, yet duty held him captive. As he meticulously adjusted the lens of his binoculars, he steeled himself for the inevitable confrontation that loomed on the horizon. His orders were clear: hold the line at all costs. What neither soldier knew was that deep within the shadows of post-war Europe, another figure lurked, a man who would bridge their fates in unimaginable ways. David Cohen, a seasoned operative of the Israeli intelligence agency, Mossad, was on a secret mission while the war raged between nations. David sought answers to a mystery that went beyond the battlefield, the whereabouts of war criminals who would eventually threaten the future of the Jewish people. He was a man driven by the memories of his ancestors' suffering, and he would stop at nothing to ensure that history did not repeat itself. The war had drawn lines across Europe, but it also drew an invisible thread connecting these three men. As the Allies advanced, tensions escalated, and a legendary battle loomed in the small German town of Remagen, where the last remaining bridge across the Rhine stood as a strategic foothold. The capture of the Ludendorff Bridge would be a turning point in the war, allowing Allied forces to pour into the heart of Germany and hasten the collapse of Nazi control. On March 7, 1945, the sound of artillery echoed ominously as Jack's unit approached the bridge. The air was thick with the acrid scent of gunpowder, and the rumble of tanks clashed with the cries of soldiers. Jack's hands trembled on his rifle. He was terrified, yet exhilarated by the proximity of history. The bridge was still standing, but German forces were well aware of its significance. Klaus's orders were to hold the line, to protect the bridge with every ounce of strength he had left. As the first shots rang out, Jack dove for cover, his mind racing with thoughts of home and the future. He caught a glimpse of Klaus's uniform, a stark reminder that the man on the other side was just as human as he was. The two men were trapped in a deadly game, each believing they were the heroes of their own stories, but fate had a way of twisting narratives. Amidst the chaos, David Cohen watched from a distance, hidden within the rubble of a bombed-out building. His mission was to gather intelligence on the German defenses around the bridge, but he could not ignore that the sounds of conflict could lead him closer to the war criminals he sought. With time running out, he had to act quickly. The bridge was not just a military target, it was a portal to uncover the dark secrets of a regime that had, for too long, evaded justice. As the battle for the bridge intensified, Klaus realized his troops were outnumbered. Each shot fired felt like a betrayal of his soul. The orders rang hollow in his ears as he witnessed the bravery of the Allied soldiers charging forward. Driven by hope and the promise of liberation, Jack's face became a symbol of that hope, and Klaus hesitated, torn between duty and the growing realization that his own humanity was slipping away. The two men were unaware of how their paths would soon intertwine, but David, from his vantage point, felt the weight of their choices pressing down upon him. The Israelis had been born from the ashes of their ancestors, rising like a phoenix to reshape their destiny. If he could draw connections between the battles on the ground and the ones fought in the shadows, he might unlock the answers he sought. As the sun dipped lower, casting an orange glow across the battlefield, the conflict reached its fever pitch. Jack found himself pinned down behind a wall, bullets ricocheting off the concrete. He could see the bridge, a beacon of hope that seemed both impossibly close and eternally distant. In that moment, he felt an unfamiliar surge of courage. He would fight not just for his country, but for a future free from tyranny. Klaus, facing an onslaught of American troops, felt the weight of despair precipitating within him. With each fallen comrade, he grappled with the moral implications of his service. As he took a breath to steady his aim, he glimpsed Jack in the distance, an American soldier who was not so different from himself. Determined to hold the line, Klaus had a decision to make: continue the fight or seek a way to avert further bloodshed. Just as Jack prepared to rally his men for a final charge, a deafening explosion erupted near the bridge, sending debris flying. The ground quaked beneath their feet, shaking the resolve of both sides. In that moment of chaos, David recognized an opportunity. The turmoil could conceal his movements. He dashed toward the bridge, avoiding the line of fire as he sought to gather crucial intelligence while navigating the battlefield littered with conflict. As smoke filled the air and the sounds of war echoed around him, Jack's heart raced. He could feel the tide of battle shifting, and with it, the potential for unimaginable change. Klaus was grappling with his own demons, and somewhere among the ruins, David was piecing together the story of a conflict that transcended the battlefield. In that instant, the lives of these three men would intersect, setting in motion a series of events that would reshape not only their destinies, but the very fabric of history itself. Unbeknownst to them, the choices they faced under the relentless pressure of war would echo through time. As the first sparks of dawn began to break across the horizon, the fate of the Ludendorff Bridge hung in a delicate balance. Each man, Jack, Klaus, and David, stood on the precipice of a decision that could alter the course of their lives forever. The legendary battleground awaited, and the true story of their intertwined fates was only just beginning to unfold. The ground trembled with the promise of what was to come, and as the first light of day pierced the smoky haze, it illuminated the path they were about to take. Would Jack and Klaus remain enemies, or could they find common ground amidst the wreckage? What secrets would David uncover in the chaos? The answers lay just beyond the horizon, waiting to be revealed as history continued to write itself in blood and valor. The dawn of March 8, 1945, brought with it an eerie stillness, an unsettled calm that settled over the battlefield like a shroud. Jack Thompson peered through the smoke, scanning the remnants of the Ludendorff Bridge. Yesterday's battle had left countless bodies strewn across the ground, and the scent of gunpowder still hung heavy in the air. Jack's heart raced as he tried to shake off the haunting images of his fallen comrades. The sun struggled to rise, casting a pallid glow on what remained of hope. Klaus Richter stood atop a crumbling wall, breathing heavily as he contemplated the carnage. The sight of American soldiers charging with unwavering courage had been both terrifying and oddly inspiring. Each time he pulled the trigger, he felt a part of himself dying. He had grown disillusioned with the war, but the edicts of the Nazi regime still bound him in chains of obligation. Yesterday, he hesitated in the heat of battle, and he could not shake the feeling that his moment of indecision had cost him dearly. The carnage around him was a testament to what he had wrought. Nearby, hidden among the debris, David Cohen had made his way closer to the bridge. He had witnessed the battle unfold, but his focus was elsewhere. He needed to find a way to gather intelligence to connect the dots that could potentially lead him to the war criminals evading justice. The remnants of the German command structure were his target, and he could feel the weight of their culpability pressing down on him. This was not just about military strategy, it was a battle for the heart and soul of the future. As the sun finally broke through the clouds, illuminating the remnants of the bridge, Jack felt a surge of determination. He could not let fear paralyze him. Rallying his fellow soldiers, he called out, "We can't give up now. We have to take that bridge." His heart thundered in his chest, echoing the shouts of his comrades. They had witnessed too much suffering and loss to turn back now. The bridge was more than a tactical position, it was a symbol of freedom. Forward! Jack roared, leading the charge once more. With renewed vigor, the Americans surged ahead, advancing toward the crumbling structure that had become a beacon for both sides. Each step was fraught with danger as the Germans scrambled to fortify their defenses once more. Klaus's heart raced. He had received word that reinforcements were en route, but the urgency of the situation was palpable. He glanced down at the bridge from his vantage point, calculating odds. His men were weary, and their ammunition was dwindling. As Jack and his men pushed forward, he caught sight of Klaus from a distance. He felt a shiver run down his spine as he recognized the face of his enemy, a man who had hesitated when he could have fired. Jack's resolve hardened. He could not afford to think of them as individuals, even though the swell of humanity tugged at his heart. They were fighting for their beliefs, even if those beliefs were rooted in a twisted ideology. Klaus felt the weight of Jack's gaze. He wondered if the American could sense the turmoil within him, could feel the pull of humanity that urged him to abandon a fight. The bridge loomed ahead, a gateway to liberation for some and a fortress for others. The air crackled with tension as both men prepared for the inevitable clash. In the chaos of battle, David spotted a group of German officers taking cover in the remnants of the villa. He ducked behind a shattered wall, his instincts honed by years of survival. This could be the opportunity he had been waiting for, not just for intelligence, but for a chance to ensure these men faced justice for their crimes. He took a deep breath, steadying himself as he drew closer, aware that the ongoing conflict would either shield him or expose him to certain death. As Jack surged ahead, he shouted out commands, his voice hoarse but filled with determination. "We have to reach the bridge." His men, inspired by his resolve, followed him into the fray. The gunfire whipped around them like a vicious storm, each bullet a reminder of the stakes at play. In that moment, Jack felt something shift within him, a greater purpose beyond just survival. He was part of something larger, a movement towards justice and the possibility of peace. Meanwhile, Klaus's thoughts were a whirlwind. He had always believed himself to be a soldier of honor, but the lines between honor and morality were blurring. Should he offer his men a chance to surrender? Could he abandon the fight for the greater good? As he watched Jack rally his forces, a flicker of hope ignited within him, a hope that perhaps, just perhaps, there could be life beyond the war. The sound of explosions echoed through the valley, momentarily subduing the clamor of gunfire. David, hidden beneath the shattered beam, peered through the chaos. The Germans were retreating, a sign that the tide was turning. It was now or never. He could not let this chance slip away. His mission to uncover the war criminals' whereabouts depended on him unraveling the fabric of the German command structure. He had to act swiftly. As the Americans pushed closer to the bridge, a sudden wave of shells rained down around them. The ground erupted in a cacophony of sound and fury. Jack ducked for cover, adrenaline coursing through his veins. But in the midst of the chaos, he caught a glimpse of Klaus, who stood frozen, his face reflecting the turmoil of battle and conflict. Jack shouted, daring to cross the invisible line that separated them. "Are you truly willing to die for a cause that forsakes your own humanity?" Klaus met his gaze, the weight of Jack's words settling heavily upon him. In that fleeting moment, he saw not an enemy, but a man who shared his fears and doubts. The revelations gnawed at him, threatening to unravel his sense of duty. "You don't understand," he replied, his voice strained. "I am trapped in a web of orders and ideology. My hands are tied, but then fight for something else," Jack implored, desperation clinging to his voice. "This doesn't have to end in bloodshed. We don't have to be enemies." Before Klaus could respond, another explosion rocked the ground, sending debris flying. Jack and Klaus instinctively took cover, the fates intertwining amidst the chaos. In that moment, David seized his opportunity, dashing toward the villa where the German officers had taken refuge. His mission had just become more urgent, the opportunity to gather crucial intel overshadowed by the growing chaos. The battle for the bridge surged forward, both sides locked in a deadly contest of wills. Jack's men pressed on, emboldened by a flicker of unity, while Klaus grappled with the realization that a change was needed. His heart raced as he took a deep breath, torn between duty and the burgeoning sense of morality. In the depths of war-torn Remagen, three destinies were converging, each poised to shape the future of a fractured world. As the fighting escalated and uncertainties loomed, David's path intertwined with those of Jack and Klaus in ways none could foresee. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, cloaking the battlefield in a crimson glow, the true cost of war became painfully clear. Would Klaus find the courage to defy orders? Could Jack and Klaus bridge the chasm of enmity to forge an alliance? And what secrets would David uncover in the shadows that threatened to change everything? With uncertainty swelling around them like smoke, the ground beneath their feet trembled with the weight of history in the making. The legendary battleground awaited their next move, and the choices they would have to make in the heat of conflict would echo through the ages unbeknownst to them. They were not just fighting for survival, they were grappling with the very essence of humanity itself. The tide was about to turn, and the true legacy of this war was yet to be written. The clash of metal and the screams of the wounded filled the air as the sun dipped low behind the remnants of the Ludendorff Bridge. Private Jack Thompson's heart raced as he fought his way through the chaos, the stakes higher than ever. Each step closer to the bridge felt like a step toward destiny, yet uncertainty gnawed at his resolve. The faces of fallen comrades haunted him, urging him forward even as fear sought to grip his heart. Klaus Richter, positioned atop the crumbled wall, stared through his rifle scope at the advancing Americans. The weight of his rifle felt heavier than ever as he battled against the urge to lower it. Each round he fired felt like a betrayal not only to the enemy, but to his own soul. "What am I fighting for?" he murmured to himself, the words swallowed by the roar of battle. With each enemy soldier he took down, he felt a piece of his humanity slip away, replaced by a sickening sense of obligation. The Americans surged forward, emboldened by Jack's rallying cry, pushing past the remnants of war's destruction. "We can't let those bastards hold the bridge," Jack shouted, his voice cutting through the din of explosions. But as he charged, he couldn't shake the image of Klaus from his mind. That moment of hesitation during the last battle pierced through Jack's thoughts like a haunting echo. Could Klaus be swayed? Was there a chance they could find common ground amid the carnage? David Cohen watched from the shadows, his sharp eyes surveying the battlefield. The chaos provided him the cover he needed to approach the German officers holed up in the villa. His mission was critical: gather intelligence that could unravel a web of war criminals who had evaded justice for far too long. But as he moved closer, the sounds of battle intensified, threatening to reveal his presence. Suddenly, Jack caught sight of Klaus again. This time, he was standing at a precarious vantage point, his rifle raised but not leveled at Jack. In that instant, Jack felt a strange connection, a flicker of understanding. "Klaus," he shouted over the clamor. "You don't have to do this, you can still choose." Klaus flinched at Jack's words, an internal battle raging within him. Could he really abandon the orders that bound him? "Go back," he shouted, desperation creeping into his voice. "You don't understand. I have no choice." But Jack pressed on. "You do have a choice. You can fight for something worth fighting for." A deafening explosion rocked the ground, sending a shower of dirt and debris cascading around them. In the chaos, Klaus's resolve faltered. He lowered his rifle, but was instantly torn between duty and the flickering embers of humanity ignited by Jack's word. The sound of gunfire intensified, and his comrades pressed forward, unaware of the conflict brewing within their officer. Meanwhile, David moved stealthily, ducking low as he navigated through the wreckage toward the villa. He could hear the muffled tones of German officers discussing troop movements and strategies, a goldmine of information he could use against them. He needed to be quick. The growing intensity of the battle indicated that the Americans were gaining ground, and he had to strike before it was too late. As Jack led his squad toward the bridge, they faced a hail of gunfire. The air crackled with tension, and Jack felt his heart pound in time with the rattle of gunfire. They were so close to victory, but the realization of what they were about to do weighed heavily on him. Each American soldier around him was driven by hope and the promise of freedom, but at what cost? "Keep moving," Jack shouted, trying to drown out his doubts. "We're almost there." Klaus watched the Americans advance with a mixture of dread and admiration. He felt trapped between the orders he had received and the growing desire to protect life. As he shifted his grip on his rifle, a voice in the back of his mind urged him to do anything to stop the senseless slaughter. The bridge had become a symbol of a greater conflict, and he was no longer sure where his loyalty truly lay. Just then, a group of American soldiers approached from the east, sending a wave of panic through the German ranks. Klaus's orders were to hold the line, but as he watched the desperate determination of the soldiers advancing toward the bridge, he felt a sense of kinship with them. How many lives would be lost if he continued to fight? Klaus ordered, his voice strained, but the words felt foreign on his tongue. His men hesitated, glancing back at him in confusion. One asked, disbelief etched across his face. "I said fall back." Klaus repeated, his voice more resolute. "We can continue the slaughter." The German soldiers exchanged uncertain glances but began to retreat, yielding to their officer's unexpected defiance. The Americans, emboldened by the sight of their adversaries faltering, pressed forward even more. Victoriously, Jack saw the Germans begin to pull back. "Push forward. We got them on the run," he shouted, his voice filled with adrenaline. He couldn't allow himself to dwell on the implications of Klaus's orders. All that mattered was taking the bridge and securing a foothold on German soil. As the Americans surged into the remnants of the villa, David was on the cusp of discovery. He listened intently to the German officers, their voices filled with panic. The information they exchanged could potentially expose the war criminals he had been pursuing. He had to get closer. The chaos of battle provided him the perfect cover. "It is dispersing troops to the west," one officer said, his voice filled with urgency. David's heart raced. He needed to capture their plans, to document every detail. He stealthily crept closer, heart pounding as the officers continued their frantic discussion. "We must regroup. We cannot lose this position." If the Allies crossed the bridge, the final words were muffled as David strained to hear. He snapped a quick photo of the officers, their anxious faces captured in the moment. This was what he had come for, but the sounds of gunfire echoed closer, and he knew he had to leave. Just as he turned to retreat, a loud crash echoed above him. A section of the villa collapsed under the strain of artillery fire, sending him tumbling into a hidden alcove. Dust filled his lungs as he fought to regain his footing. Amidst the chaos, Jack reached the edge of the bridge, adrenaline coursing through him. He could see the German forces reeling, their ranks breaking under the relentless advance of the Allied troops. His heart soared with the possibility of victory, but a nagging thought pulled at him: what would this victory cost him? In a moment of clarity, Jack glanced back toward Klaus, who was still standing atop the wall, wrestling with his own demons. "Klaus," Jack shouted once more. "Join us, we can end this madness together." Klaus hesitated, his heart racing as he processed the reality of Jack's words. He watched as his men fled, their morale shattered. Jack, standing amidst the chaos, was a symbol of the hope he had almost forgotten. He felt a flicker of resolve ignite within him. What if he could become the change he sought? The sound of gunfire erupted again, jolting Klaus from his reverie. He had a choice to make. He could either fight for a dying ideology or forge a new path, a path toward peace. Jack shouted, rallying his men to press the attack against the remaining German positions. With every fiber of his being, Klaus made his choice. He lifted his rifle and pointed it skyward, a silent declaration of defiance against the oppression he had served. "I will not fight for this any longer," he shouted, causing those around him to turn and stare, confusion etched on their faces. The ground shook beneath him as the Americans surged toward the bridge. Jack, witnessing Klaus's transformation, felt a surge of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they could find a way to work together. As David stumbled from the wreckage of the villa, he caught sight of the unfolding drama between Jack and Klaus. The battle for the bridge was not just a fight for territory, it had transcended into something deeper, a struggle for the very soul of humanity. As the sun set on the blood-soaked battlefield, the choices made in that moment would echo through time. Would Klaus's defiance inspire others to question the ideologies that bound them? Could Jack and Klaus unite against a common enemy, not just for the bridge but for the promise of a better future? The answers lay in the chaos of war, waiting to be forged in fires of conflict. In the heart of Remagen, the legendary battleground awaited, and what unfolded next would write the final chapter in a story that had captured their intertwined fates, one that would resonate across the ages. The world was on the brink of transformation, and each man stood at a crossroads, poised to shape history in ways they could not yet comprehend. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a haunting glow over the battlefield as Private Jack Thompson and Oberleutnant Klaus Richter faced a moment that could alter their fates forever. Jack's shout for Klaus to join the fight against tyranny reverberated in the air, a clarion call to humanity amidst the din of war. Klaus, now standing atop the crumbling wall, felt the weight of his choice pressing down on him like a leaden shroud. The retreating German soldiers looked back at him, bewildered. "What are you doing, sir?" one of his men cried out, confusion mixed with fear in his voice. "I am choosing life," Klaus shouted, his voice breaking through the haze of chaos. "I refuse to fight for a regime that has betrayed our humanity." With those words a shift occurred. The remaining men around him watched, some hesitant, others emboldened by his declaration. He lowered his rifle, the weapon of war that had become an extension of his own tortured soul. In that moment, Jack felt an electric surge of hope. This was the turning point he had longed for. If Klaus could break free of the shackles of blind obedience, perhaps others could too. "We can end this," Jack called again, his voice straining against the din of gunfire. "Let us make a stand for something greater than ourselves." As the Americans closed in, buoyed by Jack's relentless courage, Klaus motioned to his men to hold fire. The air crackled with tension as the realization set in perhaps they could choose a different path. The chaos of battle was still raging, but Klaus's heart raced with the possibility of peace. Meanwhile, David Cohen, hidden among the rubble, had witnessed this moment of defiance unfold. His mission to gather intelligence had morphed into something more profound. It was now about the very essence of humanity and the legacy they would leave behind. He had sought war criminals, but here lay a chance to expose the deeper evil of war itself. In the shadows, he pulled out his camera to document Klaus's transformation, capturing the pivotal moment where an enemy soldier chose compassion over conflict. This evidence would serve as a testament to the power of choice, a flicker of hope in a world steeped in darkness. The sound of gunfire surged, but Klaus's voice rang out above it all. "If we do not stop this, we will be lost, our souls will be lost." The men around him hesitated, torn between duty and the burgeoning realization that they were fighting for a dying ideology. One by one, they began to lower their weapons, unsure but feeling the collective weight of Klaus's conviction. Jack's eyes widened as he watched the German soldiers falter. Could it be possible? Was Klaus truly leading them away from the precipice of destruction? You re-choosing freedom. Jack shouted, recognition dawning in his heart. Together, we can build something new. The Americans surged forward, emboldened by this unexpected turn of events. As they approached the bridge, the sight before them shifted from one of impending violence to a scene of possible reconciliation. The landscape, once a battlefield, began to feel like a shared ground where the remnants of war could give way to the seeds of peace. Klaus stepped down from the wall, his heart pounding in his chest. "We can go on like this. Let us talk," he shouted, his voice carrying above the remnants of the clamor. "We can allow our people to live rather than continue this senseless slaughter." The German soldiers exchanged glances, uncertainty flickering in their eyes. One soldier stepped forward, hesitating at first, but then finding courage in Klaus's determination. "What do we say if they fire?" he asked, the fear of conflict still coursing through him. Klaus took a breath. "Then we will stand as men, not soldiers. We will show them that even in war, humanity must prevail." With that declaration, the atmosphere shifted. Jack felt an overwhelming sense of unity. Perhaps this battle was more than a fight for the bridge, it was a fight for the very soul of their nations. Jack ordered, and his unit halted, taken aback by the sight of German soldiers lowering their weapons. "Let us talk." Klaus shouted, his voice commanding yet filled with an earnest plea. He gestured toward Jack, who stood a few paces away, eyes wide with revelation. "We can find a way to end this without more bloodshed." Tension hung thick in the air, but then something remarkable happened. One by one, the soldiers on both sides began to load their weapons, the echoes of conflict fading into uncertainty and a glimmer of understanding. David, realizing the history that was unfolding before him, slipped from the shadows, his camera poised to capture this extraordinary moment. He moved closer, documenting the soldiers' hesitant steps toward each other, the fear giving way to something richer, a collective yearning for peace. As the two sides faced each other, uncertainty laced the air. Jack called out, his voice filled with conviction. "We can choose to stand together to forge a future that honors our humanity." Klaus nodded, his heart racing. "I stand with you," he shouted, a declaration that rippled through the ranks of both armies. "Let us find a better way." In the stillness that followed, the battlefield transformed. The echoes of gunfire faded into the background as soldiers began to lower their weapons, exchanging tentative glances filled with the shared understanding of what had been lost. David stepped forward, feeling the weight of the moment. "This is just the beginning," he spoke to the group, his voice steady and firm. "What unfolds here today can reverberate beyond this battlefield. You are not just men fighting for ideology, you are shaping the future." As dawn broke over the horizon, it illuminated the remnants of the Ludendorff Bridge. For the first time in years, the air felt lighter, as if the weight of war was starting to lift. The soldiers stood together, uncertain yet united in a shared space of hope. Klaus and Jack locked eyes, a silent understanding passing between them, a bond forged not in the fires of conflict but in the shared realization of what it meant to be human. "We can build a new path," Jack spoke, his voice filled with determination. The sounds of the battlefield were replaced by murmurs of conversation as soldiers began to communicate, sharing stories and fears, hopes and dreams. David busily captured images, knowing he was witnessing history, an opportunity to document not just the end of battle, but the beginning of a new dialogue. As the sun rose higher, shining down on the now peaceful battlefield, Jack and Klaus stood side by side. Around them, soldiers from both sides shared a moment of humanity, a collective pause in the chaos that had consumed their lives. "What will we say when the world asks what happened here?" Klaus pondered, gazing out over the bridge. Jack smiled, his heart swelling with hope. "We'll all say that we chose to fight for each other instead of against each other." And thus, on that legendary battleground, the fate of a war-torn continent began to shift. Nations would remember the courage of those who chose peace over violence, and as stories spread, they would inspire generations to come. In the hearts of Jack, Klaus, and David, a new legacy was born, one that would transcend borders and echo through time, reminding all who came after that in the midst of war, the flame of humanity could still flicker brightly, illuminating a path toward reconciliation and hope.